There's a lot of ego rescuing going on in the Conservative Party and the Tory Party at the moment. And one of the people who's trying to rescue her reputation is Therese Coffey. And she put out an interview yesterday in the Observer newspaper. Tories must show they care about the environment, says Therese Coffey. And it's completely contradictory and slightly critical of the Prime Minister, and it makes no sense at all. She says that despite the noise over the last week, the government was still committed to reaching net zero by 2050. It doesn't say anything about the fact that she intends not to speak to Greenpeace anymore. She's gone off in some sort of huff. But she points out that last Sunday, Rishi Sunak ordered a formal review into low-traffic neighbourhood schemes and has criticised Labour as being anti-motorist. But it doesn't quite say what is so pro-environment about that. The Prime Minister also attacked the Labour leader for pledging to ban new North Sea gas and oil exploration and promised the Conservatives would max out all remaining reserves. In spite of Sunak's recent comments, Coffey insisted the government was not walking away from the environment. She says, "It's a Conservative government that has cut carbon faster than any G7 nation, and we did that while proving that you don't need to add burdens onto people. Any Conservative," she told that was to the Daily Mail, "any Conservative knows that to have sustainable food security and economic prosperity, you need to protect the environment. Conservation is literally in our name." Very good. There's been a lot of noise over the last few weeks about this government walking away from the environment, but the reality couldn't be further from the truth. Trust us on our record, not on the clickbait. So she's up to the latest terminology. Her dictionary, her thesaurus is up to date, but she's not saying anything. She said that the protests, the report published by the Climate Change Committee expressed the view that there was a lack of leadership on climate within government. Utterly unacceptable. Sunak stepped up to his criticisms of green policies in the wake of the by-election victory at Uxbridge and Ruislip, with senior Conservative and Labour figures attributing the loss to the Mayor of London's ULEZ scheme. In the interview with the Sunday Telegraph, the Prime Minister took aim at Labour's anti-motorist positions. He attacked the opposition for criticising his fuel duty, not wanting to clamp down on eco-zealots for disrupting traffic, and condemned the Welsh Labour government for blocking major road building projects. Now, I don't see quite where Therese Coffey is saying that the Conservatives are now pro-environment. All of this is on the back foot. She points out that the Prime Minister did encourage a coast-to-coast path on the National Trail to improve people's access to some of the loveliest parts of our country. But the article finishes with a reference to Zach Goldsmith resigning because he felt that Sunak was uninterested in the environment, and went on to criticise the Prime Minister for attending the party hosted by Rupert Murdoch instead of an international environment forum. So what is extraordinary about that article in the Observer is, although its headline suggests one thing, and although I'm sure Therese Coffey was expecting one thing, if you actually read the article, it's quite contradictory. It says nothing about the Prime Minister or indeed the Conservatives endorsing environmental climate support. In fact, it says quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. There's nothing there in that article about the Conservatives embracing net zero or championing net zero or indeed championing any other environmental cause. It's just a slogan at the top of the page and guff in the middle of the page, and that's from the Guardian-Observer. And that's from the mouth of Therese Coffey, I suppose. Guff. It's just guff. And while we have this sort of media, while we have this sort of government, we cannot progress because it's simply a matter of filling the airwaves with rubbish that purports to be one thing, is actually another thing, is complete rubbish. This is why the Nigel Farage story was so important, because Farage exposed the guff in the banking system, saying one thing, doing another. This is probably why the Wotton story, why the Hugh Edward story, why the Philip Schofield story is important, because again we see the difference between what is shown and what is said. And we could call this hypocrisy if we wanted to be very grand. We could suggest there's some criminal activity going on if we wanted to be very legalistic. But fundamentally, this is about a very straightforward moral issue. When somebody says one thing and does another, it's called deceit. And we've got so used to it that it's become second nature, not only to our government, but also to our media and our opposition and other members of parliament. It is spread like jam through our government, through our elite establishments, through our systems. Of course, it's in law. It's all the way through the legal system, because the legal system is based on playing around with the meaning of words. We concede that immediately. But elsewhere, it's all about lies. And in the end, people tire of lies and lying because you can't depend on anything, because nothing that you're told means anything of substance. Everything is short of the truth.